The autumn wind whistled through the rusty sign of Parker and Son Auto Repair as Michael wiped the grease from his calloused hands. The small workshop in rural Kansas had been his whole world for the past 30 years, a legacy passed down from his father that now seemed to be slipping through his fingers like sand. He watched as another truck rumbled past his shop, heading straight for the newly opened chain store franchise just outside town. Grace, his wife of 20 years, appeared at the workshop door with a steaming cup of coffee. Her gentle smile couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. "Any customers today?" she asked, although they both knew the answer. Michael shook his head, taking the coffee with a grateful nod. Their children, Ethan and Lily, were at school, blissfully unaware of the mounting bills piling up on their kitchen table. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Michael couldn't focus on the animated chatter of his children discussing their day at school. His mind wandered to the stack of unpaid invoices in his office drawer and the dwindling number of customers. The big chains were slowly suffocating small businesses like his, offering cheaper services with flashier facilities. The heritage and personal touch that had been the cornerstone of Parker and Son for generations now seemed outdated in this fast-paced world. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, Michael sat with Grace on their worn porch swing, the same spot where they had shared countless dreams over the years. "I saw a notice today," he began hesitantly, "about business opportunities in Nashville." Grace's hand tightened around his. They had discussed moving before, but it had always been a distant possibility, a what-if scenario for braver days. "Thomas called again," Grace added softly, referring to Michael's old friend who had moved to Nashville years ago and built a successful automotive business. "He says there's real potential there. The trucking industry is booming, and they need experienced mechanics who understand more than just the basics." The next few days passed in a blur of soul-searching conversations and late-night research. The decision wasn't just about business, it was about uprooting their children from the only home they'd ever known, about leaving behind the community that had shaped their lives. Yet, with each passing day, as another regular customer defected to the chain stores, the decision became clearer. The turning point came when Ethan, their 14-year-old son, found Michael in the workshop late one night, staring at an old photograph of his father standing proudly in front of the newly opened shop. "Dad," Ethan said, with wisdom beyond his years, "Grandpa always said that sometimes you have to take a step backward to leap forward." The decision was made over Sunday dinner. As Michael looked at his family's faces, Grace's encouraging smile, Ethan's excited grin, and even Lily's nervous but trusting eyes, he knew that together they could face whatever challenges Nashville held. They would leave behind the safety of their small town, but they would carry with them the values, work ethic, and family bonds that had sustained them through generations. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. The Nashville skyline loomed before them, a forest of steel and glass that seemed to mock their modest U-Haul truck packed with dreams and second-hand furniture. Michael gripped the steering wheel tighter, stealing glances at his sleeping family. Grace had finally dozed off after navigating most of the journey, while Ethan and Lily were curled up in the back seat, their faces pressed against the windows. The new reality hit hard when they arrived at their rental home, a modest two-bedroom house on the outskirts of the city, a far cry from their spacious Kansas home. The neighbors barely glanced their way as they unloaded their belongings, a stark contrast to the helping hands they were used to back home. That night, sleeping on mattresses on the floor, the magnitude of their decision weighed heavily on Michael's shoulders. The first weeks in Nashville proved more challenging than anticipated. The temporary job Michael had secured at Quick Fix Auto Repair barely covered their expenses, and the work environment was nothing like he had imagined. Instead of the craftsmanship he prided himself on, the focus was on quick turnarounds and upselling unnecessary services. Each time he had to rush a job or push a service he knew a customer didn't need, a piece of his professional pride crumbled. Grace's attempts to establish her cafe faced unexpected obstacles. The location they had chosen, seemingly perfect on paper, turned out to be in a dying commercial strip. The local suppliers, used to dealing with established businesses, were hesitant to extend credit to a newcomer. Each evening, They would share their struggles over dinner, trying to keep their voices low so Ethan and Lily wouldn't worry. A glimmer of hope appeared when Thomas, Michael's old friend, introduced him to Stanley Henderson, a prominent figure in Nashville's automotive industry. Stanley took an immediate liking to Michael's old-school approach to vehicle maintenance. "We need more people like you," Stanley had said, mechanics who treat each vehicle like it belongs to their own family. However, this connection came with its own complications. The truth about Stanley's business practices began to surface gradually. What started as subtle suggestions about cutting corners to increase profits evolved into more explicit pressures. Michael found himself at a crossroads when Stanley offered to help him secure a loan for his own shop, with conditions that would compromise everything Michael's father had taught him about honest business. Meanwhile, Grace's fortunes began to shift unexpectedly. Her struggling cafe, tucked away in what seemed like a forgotten corner of Nashville, caught the attention of local truck drivers who appreciated her home-style cooking and genuine warmth. Word spread through the trucking community, and soon her small establishment became a haven for drivers seeking a taste of home on their long hauls. The success of Grace's cafe brought both joy and complications to the family. As her business grew, she needed more help, forcing her to hire staff and expand her hours. The increased workload meant less time at home, straining the family's delicate balance. Ethan and Lily, still adjusting to their new school, needed more support than ever as they faced the challenges of being outsiders in a tight-knit community. It was during this period of adjustment that Michael discovered something troubling about Stanley's business empire. While reviewing some paperwork for a potential partnership, he noticed discrepancies in the supply chain documentation. The parts being distributed through Stanley's network weren't just cheap alternatives, they were counterfeits being passed off as genuine articles, putting countless drivers at risk. The revelation shook Michael to his core. His initial instinct was to distance himself immediately, but he realized the situation was more complex. Stanley's influence in Nashville's automotive industry was far-reaching, and many families' livelihoods depended on his business network. Moreover, Michael had already accepted some initial help from Stanley, making him feel partially complicit. A chance encounter with Sarah Chen, an investigative journalist working on a story about automotive industry practices, presented Michael with a difficult choice. Sarah had been tracking Stanley's operations for months and needed an insider's perspective to complete her investigation. She promised anonymity, but Michael knew that if he helped her, the fallout could affect not just Stanley, but potentially every business connected to him, including Grace's Cafe, which had begun catering to several of Stanley's corporate events. The weight of this moral dilemma affected every aspect of Michael's life. His distraction was noticed by Ethan, who had inherited his father's perceptive nature. One evening, as they worked together on Ethan's science project about automotive engineering, his son asked him point-blank why he seemed so troubled. The question caught Michael off guard, forcing him to consider how his choices would impact not just his family's immediate future, but the values he was passing on to his children. The truth about Stanley Henderson came from an unexpected source. During a busy lunch rush at Grace's Cafe, an elderly man in a worn trucker's cap sat quietly in the corner, observing everything. What no one knew was that this unassuming figure was Robert Maxwell, the legendary founder of Maxtech Industries, who had mysteriously disappeared from the public eye 5 years ago after his company was acquired by larger corporations. Robert had been tracking Stanley's operations for years, gathering evidence of his fraudulent practices. He revealed to Michael that Stanley wasn't just distributing counterfeit parts, he was systematically buying out small repair shops, forcing them into bankruptcy through predatory practices, then acquiring them at fraction of their worth. It was the same pattern that had threatened Michael's shop back in Kansas. The revelation came with another shocking twist. Thomas, Michael's supposed friend who had encouraged the move to Nashville, was actually Stanley's nephew and had been targeting struggling shop owners across multiple states. The entire setup had been orchestrated to bring Michael to Nashville, hoping to exploit his reputation for honest business to legitimize their operation. Grace's Cafe success had unexpectedly disrupted their plans. The trucking community's support of her business had created an independent network that Stanley couldn't control. What's more, her cafe had become a gathering place where drivers shared stories about mechanical failures caused by suspicious parts, the very evidence that could expose Stanley's entire operation. Sarah Chen, the investigative journalist, turned out to be more than she appeared as well. She was working with a task force dedicated to protecting small business owners from corporate fraud. Her interest in Michael wasn't just about Stanley. She had been following the pattern of shop closures since Kansas, trying to piece together the larger conspiracy. The situation reached a critical point when Ethan, using his computer skills for a school project, accidentally discovered encrypted emails between Thomas and Stanley on a shared network at the repair shop where Michael worked. The emails detailed their plans to pressure more shop owners into selling their businesses, including a list of those who had refused, some of whom had mysteriously lost their business licenses. A massive opportunity presented itself when Nashville was chosen to host the National Trucking Alliance convention. Stanley, as a major industry player, was set to be the keynote speaker, planning to announce a nationwide expansion of his parts distribution network. What he didn't know was that Grace's Cafe had been selected to cater the event, thanks to her growing reputation among truckers. The convention center buzzed with activity as Grace and her team prepared for the biggest catering job of their lives. Meanwhile, Michael worked with Robert Maxwell and Sarah to coordinate their plan. The evidence they had gathered would be worthless if they couldn't prove Stanley's direct involvement. They needed access to his private servers, which would be connected to the convention center's network during his presentation. Lily, who had been quietly struggling with feeling left out of the family's challenges, became an unexpected hero. Her school's robotics club was invited to present their projects at the convention's Future of Transportation exhibition. Her team's presentation area was strategically located next to the main server room. While setting up their robot, she noticed something odd: Thomas nervously entering the server room multiple times, carrying external hard drives. The day of the convention brought another surprise. Among the attendees was Eleanor Parker, Michael's aunt, whom he hadn't seen in decades. She had been his father's business partner back in Kansas before a falling out separated the family. Now, as the head of the traditional automotive guild, she wielded significant influence in the industry. Her presence complicated matters. Michael had always believed she had abandoned the family business, but Robert revealed that she had been forced out by the same network now threatening him. A severe storm was forecast to hit Nashville that evening, but Stanley refused to postpone his keynote speech. As thunder rolled outside, Grace noticed water leaking through the convention center's roof, directly above the electrical room housing the servers. The building's backup generators kicked in, but they weren't designed to handle the extensive network of computers Stanley had installed for his presentation. In the chaos of the power fluctuations, Ethan spotted Thomas hurriedly trying to transfer files from the servers. Using the skills he had learned in his computer club, he realized that Thomas was actually deleting evidence. The storm had created the perfect cover for them to erase their tracks before the expansion announcement. But they hadn't counted on Lily's robotics project. Her team had created an automated backup system that had been running tests on the convention center's network all day, inadvertently copying everything. The convention hall fell silent as Stanley Henderson approached the podium. Behind him, a massive screen displayed his company's logo, while Thomas stood nervously in the wings. Just as Stanley began to speak about his vision for the future of automotive repair, Robert Maxwell stood up from his seat in the back row. "I believe," he announced in a clear voice, "we should discuss the real future of our industry." What followed was a masterful presentation of evidence, led by Robert and supported by Sarah's investigation. The backup data from Lily's robotics project provided irrefutable proof of Stanley's systematic destruction of family businesses. Eleanor Parker stepped forward, sharing her own story of resistance against corporate takeovers, revealing that she had been working undercover with Robert for years to protect independent shop owners. The trucking community, many of whom had become regulars at Grace's Cafe, stood united in support. They shared their experiences with faulty parts and the importance of honest, family-run businesses. Thomas, seeing the evidence mounted against them, chose to come clean, providing additional details about the operation in exchange for leniency. In the aftermath, the traditional automotive guild, under Eleanor's leadership, established a support network for independent repair shops. Michael was offered a position on the board, but he had a different vision. Instead of joining the corporate world, he proposed creating a cooperative of family-owned shops, sharing resources and expertise while maintaining their independence. Grace's Cafe became the headquarters for this new alliance. She expanded her business model to include training programs for aspiring entrepreneurs, teaching them how to maintain their independence in a corporate-dominated world. Ethan's computer skills and Lily's robotics expertise became valuable assets in modernizing small business operations while preserving their personal touch. The Parker family's journey came full circle when they received an unexpected inheritance. Eleanor had secretly purchased Michael's father's old shop in Kansas. She had maintained it all these years, waiting for the right moment to reveal that the family legacy had never truly been lost. Michael transformed it into a training center for young mechanics, combining traditional values with modern technology. The story of the Parkers became a symbol of hope for small business owners across the country. Their experience showed that success didn't have to mean selling out, and that the strongest foundations are built on family, community, and unwavering principles. As Michael stood in front of a new generation of mechanics at the training center, he realized that sometimes the biggest dreams come true in ways we never expect. End of story. Dear viewers, we hope the Parker family's journey has touched your hearts. Their story reminds us that integrity and family values can triumph even in today's challenging business world. To continue experiencing more inspiring stories like this one, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. We've created a special playlist of similar heartwarming tales about family, resilience, and triumph. You'll find it linked in the description below. Join our community of storytellers and dream builders by sharing your own family business stories in the comments. Remember, every like, share, and subscription helps us bring more of these powerful narratives to light. See you in our next video.